Of all phases of instrument flying, the instrument landing approach is the most demanding of pilot knowledge and skill. Procedure Prep 7 will present the proper procedures to be used during an ILS approach. While flying inbound to the TERPS VOR, you are advised by ATC that Lyon International Airport is using the ILS approach to runway 30 right and to expect an approach clearance upon arrival. Now is the time to familiarize yourself with the details of the approach. While inbound to the TERPS VOR, navigate using the number 1 VOR receiver. The number 2 VOR receiver and the ADF can be used to navigate from TERPS to the outer compass locator. After passing the VOR, set the number 1 receiver for the ILS approach. The approach charts should be studied carefully prior to entry into the terminal area. You should then be prepared to perform the necessary procedures without constant reference to the chart. Keep it handy, though, in case it is needed. The following information is needed from the approach chart: terminal route course and altitudes, approach course outbound, and procedure turn headings and altitude if required. Also, note the approach course inbound. In case an equipment malfunction would cause the use of a non-precision approach, note the timing between the final approach fix and the missed approach point. The decision height and required visibility are also 2 important items to note. Should a missed approach be required, the procedure is to climb to 4,000 feet on a northwest course of the ILS, return to the LOM, and hold. It is a good technique to have the missed approach instructions in mind, since your first concern on making the missed approach will be controlling the airplane. While flying the ILS approach, use the Martha checklist to remember information. The MA stands for missed approach, the R for radio frequencies, T for time, H for headings or courses to be flown, and the A for altitudes. Time now for a mini-exam. Question number 1. The correct answer is number 1. Question number 2. This time the correct response is number 4. ATC will advise what approach is being used at the destination airport. Now, let's continue our approach. In addition to setting up the number 2 radio, the ADF should be tuned to the QUIST outer compass locator frequency and identified. The ADF provides a backup of the airplane's position in relation to the final approach fix. A procedure turn is required from the feeder routes originating from the TERPS VORTAC, Taylor intersection, or Davis intersection. After crossing the outer marker, track outbound on the localizer course and make a procedure turn. After crossing the initial approach fix, reduce speed to the final approach speed. Remember, while tracking outbound, there will be reverse needle sensing, so turns should be made opposite to the direction of needle deflection. In tracking the localizer course outbound, remember the CDI is more sensitive, so heading corrections should be limited to 10 degrees. Once established on the inbound leg of the procedure turn, on a heading of 344 degrees, the airplane will approach the localizer course at a 45-degree intercept angle. As the localizer course is intercepted, the relative bearing will be 315 degrees. When the relative bearing has decreased to 320 degrees, the airplane is approaching the localizer course, and the needle should be watched more closely. As soon as the CDI begins to move toward the center, a turn should be made to the inbound heading. Now, let's discuss some other methods of arriving inbound at the final approach fix. In an approach from the holding pattern at the Quist outer compass locator, an approach without a procedure turn should be made. If ATC issues a clearance for the approach while in the holding pattern, proceed inbound to the final approach fix. At this time, the airplane should be aligned with the inbound approach course at the proper altitude. A straight-in approach from the holding pattern is approved for this particular approach. If there are restrictions to the approach or special instructions, a note or caution would appear in an open area of the plan view. Another method to arrive at the final approach fix depicted on this approach chart is a DME arc. Prior to arrival at the TERPS VORTAC, a clearance could be requested to use the DME arc to proceed to the final approach fix. Still another method of arrival is a straight-in approach when proceeding inbound from the Nagel intersection. Radar vectors are also available at Lyon International Airport on this frequency. Approach control assigns headings and altitudes which position the airplane at a proper angle to the final approach course. Although relieved of navigation responsibilities when receiving radar vectors, monitor the airplane's position with reference to the appropriate navigation aids. This will provide a backup in case of a loss of communications with the controller. Turns or changes in altitude should be made only when directed by approach control. After being cleared for a straight-in ILS approach, a descent may be made to the final approach altitude. Procedure turns, approaches from holding patterns, DME arcs, pilot navigation, and radar vectors are all initial approaches used to position the airplane on the inbound course. Let's pause now for another mini-exam. Question number 3. The correct answer is number 2. If an approach from the holding pattern is not authorized, a note will appear on the approach chart. Question number 4. The correct choice is number 2. While providing approach radar service, the controller assigns all headings and altitudes to be flown. Let's continue. While flying inbound to the final approach fix, the glide slope needle is deflected upward, indicating the airplane is below the glide slope. Once established on the final approach course, press to test the marker beacon lights and turn up the volume level to make sure the audible signal will be heard. As the aircraft nears the outer compass locator, the glide slope needle begins to move toward center. As the needle touches the top of the reference circle, reduce power to the approach power setting. Power and pitch attitude are adjusted to maintain the proper approach speed and rate of descent. Normally, corrections to the glide slope should not exceed 100 feet per minute. Upon crossing the outer compass locator and glide slope interception, the first concern is positioning the airplane on the glide slope and localizer. Then let the tower know that you are outer marker inbound. After passing the final approach fix inbound, changing wind conditions may require small adjustments to keep the needle centered. Small adjustments in pitch are made using the elevator. Normally, the miniature airplane on the attitude indicator should appear about 1 bar width below the horizon. In addition, small power changes may be required to maintain airspeed. Between the outer and middle markers, try to keep the needle centered. After passing the middle marker, the airplane should never be allowed to descend below the glide slope. Follow the glide slope down to the decision height. At this time, if visual contact has not been made with the runway environment, initiate a missed approach. The middle marker is intended to be used as distance information and may not coincide with reaching the actual decision height. Be familiar with the first steps of the missed approach so that reference to the approach chart isn't required until the climb is established. Perform the missed approach procedure exactly as published or as directed by ATC. The missed approach instructions for this approach state, climb to 4,000 feet on a northwest course of the ITRP localizer within 10 nautical miles. Then return direct to the LOM and hold. The first step in this missed approach procedure, then, is to establish a climb to 4,000 feet on the localizer course. After reaching 4,000 feet, unless otherwise directed by ATC, initiate a turn to return to Quest and enter the holding pattern. Now it's time for a final mini-exam. Question number 5. If you answered number 2, you were correct. The middle marker serves as a distance reference. Question number 6. The correct answer is number 3. After passing the final approach fix, your primary concern is to keep the needles centered. With ILS facilities becoming more common at modern airports, the understanding and skills needed to utilize the ILS approach have become very important.